There were clubs everywhere. The mafias run the city until now. They still do. It's a crooked city. It's an open city. There were brothels everywhere. It was a party town. And so many performers from the United States would come, and it was just this kind of wonderful, really decadent place that only actually cleaned up in the late 40s when the American armies said if Montreal didn't clean up the brothels, they were going to stop having the soldiers port there because every American soldier was getting syphilis from Montreal prostitutes.
Sandy, another member of the committee, casually made her pool and imagined doing her Detroit days. She's still with me. A large skinned African man, Robbie, who's a ceramic artist who helps his wife on Saturdays in the market. She is taken by Sandy, her eyes, which remind him how the Chinese had referred to Marco Polo as someone with colored eyes, he says. Sandy starts laughing. Chinese people really said that? And Lillian, who's of Chinese background, looks thrilled. Robbie insists that we eat the biggest burger Detroit has to offer, with French onion rings that are huge arcs. He makes a wide sweeping arm gesture. I watched Sandy swallow a mouthful of a really big burger. Then she calls herself an Indigenous Canadian because blacks in Nova Scotia often intermarried with Micmac people. And food brings out the best in Indigenous people, don't we know? Robbie has a white mouth.
Thank you very much, Cyril. I'm always pleased that pedagogues can be that self-disciplined, and so I didn't have to cut off Cyril, as I'm wont to do on other occasions. The flower, the rose among us, Muriel de Villemay, I think should get, probably going to read the excerpt in French, but certainly she will tell you about it en anglais. Donc, Madame de Villemay.
So, good morning everybody. I hope you do understand French, because otherwise you won't enjoy the excerpt. The book is called The Two Paul First Avenue. First I'm going to explain the title. First Avenue is the address of the United Nations headquarters where I've worked for 7 years, and the story does take place at the United Nations, partly at the United Nations and partly in Port-au-Prince. So the story is about in Haiti there is an American citizen which is killed, and he was the son of a big family in Haiti, which happened to be best friends with the U.S. ambassador in Haiti. So therefore his death angries the ambassador, involved in solving the crime, and the crisis gets to a point where the teacher's guide like that. Forces over there, because the crisis got really out of control, the Haitian people, and you know what I think I just want to get that piece I don't know. No, I think it looks very nice. I'm laughing. We're like random here. Nobody has any space. Yeah. For a corner. So everybody else here is gone on to lunch. So there you go. You're getting men in for everybody. Yes. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want to offend you, but that's not my drink. I'm reading the illegal right now by Lawrence. Stuff like that. I've never been into that. But I do taste that. It's the book that was voted in Canada Reads, right? So I'll pass it, yeah, it should be the masters of our history, because the international community is alwaes giving us orders, organizing president. So all the right
But it's
a slightly more Latin attitude, which means that even so it's just it's been probably a slightly different attitude than a more English and Prose festivals there. I was told this is a dead issue. Why are you bringing it? Now in Montreal, guess what? Language is not a dead issue. It's so much, it's our place where we live, it's our home.
Salima, the characters in Photograph, they really develop the kind of, what would their response to that kind of cultural backdrop be?
I mean, there are a couple. There's really only one, actually see character in the novel, because one sort of dies early on, and then it's just really their uncle who takes care of them, and the sisters themselves are raised by their mother, who has this sort of like very syncretic approach to religion. She's sort of a hippie. She takes a little bit for here and there where she wants to. So that's not really, for me, that kind of like cultural tension or religious tension or whatever. It's not really a big part of the book. Like, I feel like the back of the book sort of talks about like, a Sikh bagel shop in a Hasidic neighborhood, and that kind of plays that up, because I think people are interested in that. But for me, I'm less interested in that. Like, I'm interested in modern cities and the way that when it's not an issue. Like, I feel like in Canada there are times when those issues become important and become charged, but a lot of the time, we're all just people. We're just living our lives, and you're side by side with a million.
I did it! Guys, I'm doing ICU. This is not going to happen.
Big conversation.
Forget it.
Leah, what are the development of the relationship I almost accepted I was trying looking for, to be honest, classify many of responses that way. There were first times that obviously when the title started, which is really
So I'm like, I've got good ideas for that book. So she like takes my card. She's like, we need to collaborate.
You're dealing with issues that, of course, that are psychological in nature, emotional in nature, about infidelity, about family, and all of that have almost no bearing to whatever we would have conceived prejudiced as I did was part of your racial ethnic heritage. Was that a very deliberate choice in thinking about your stories?
The only story that I wrote in a deliberate way, I think, would be the one that's called Between Black and White, and that's my story. The other ones, when I write a story, I start with an emotion that I'm feeling, and take it from there. So, if I'm aiming for anything, it's aiming that the stories have some kind of a essential humanity that everybody could. It's a good read for everybody. I'm not there to hit anybody on.
What she wrote, she also wrote this one and this one.
I did one.
Yeah, she did it. Just kidding.
So sometimes I have discomfort, and that's for me where I like to go in my fiction. And so.
Language, right? Because the way one speaks is a part of one's identity, and an integral part of one's character. And it's in that restriction.
Was coming, and so we got Newfoundland instead. 1949, right? So these connections are really striking, really interesting. But to continue on and not to take up too much more time, I would answer the provocative question about voice and Canadian literature and island voices of Canadian literature by saying that what Caribbean Canadian writers have contributed to Canadian literature by and large, in French and in English, is an expanded range of recognition of the complexity of our accents, of our different accents, and the histories that ride along with those accents, because those accents are about the collisions of classes and cultures and so-called races, etc., etc. And it's out of those collisions that we have the complexity of dialects that comprise Canadian literature. I think the biggest change that's taken place in the last 50 years is the fact that we can no longer identify Can Lit, either English or French, as being only the expression of only one kind of person. So, more of a commentary than a question, but I ask you to
well, that's brilliant.
respond.
And now we see why you are the acclaimed wordsmith, and that you may put so much into such brief compass. I think, you know, that the presence antedates some of that. Obviously, you know, it goes back to the Maroons and so on. And I should add, talking about Agnes Bernard MacDonald, that equally important and probably more so was her brother, Hewitt Bernard, who was Sir John A. Macdonald's private secretary and who became the first Deputy Attorney General of Canada and probably drafted the BNA Act. So I put that out there. But I think, again, coming back to the impact on Canadian literature, we have the wider sort of multicultural spectrum and others that you know well from other parts, including Latin America, have been making this tremendous contribution to Canadian letters. So it's quite. But let me just say for Miltrel in particular, that, and I must put in this plug, Daniel Laferrière not only has gone to the Académie Française, the first Canadian to be there, but I think he has seat number 2, and certainly he has praised Miltrel's novel. Tell us about that.
All right.
Yes, I'm going to tell you how it happened. I know Danny. He lives in Montreal. He's from Haiti, and he's been published, or I should say rather, I've been published by the same editor that he has, and I went to a book signing, a launch of one of his books, and as I was approaching to have him sign,